Hey, what's going on, team? And welcome back to another edition of the Ask Maddie Show. We answer your guys' questions on the show all over social media. We collect your guys' questions, pick some of our favorites, and we cover them once a week on Wednesday. So glad you guys are here. It's important that you guys know that we come from cryptocharge.com. It is our education platform. We go live Monday through Friday covering top-down analysis, news, all kinds of important tidbits that you guys need to make smart investing decisions. We have our coin library where you guys can see entries and exits, full comprehensive analysis. We have our Discord where you guys can ask questions. We have leverage trade ideas. We have a plethora of resources for you guys. If you use code YouTube, you get 30 days free plus 50% off any membership. So please make sure you guys go check that out. We're excited to see you guys in there. So we're going to be getting into your guys' questions today. We're going to be talking about Zcash. We're going to talk about VELO, talk a little bit about Casper, and then answer a couple other questions that are kind of a little bit on the potpourri side of things. So I'm excited to get into it. We're going to be kicking it off today with a Zcash question. So the question was we need a Zcash breakdown. So this is a great day to talk about Zcash as a whole because we have had incredible performance over the last few days with Zcash. So let's go to the chart here and let's take a look at what's going on with the Zcash chart. So Zcash is a privacy coin, guys. It's a proof of work model, just like Bitcoin, 21 million, right? Has the halving, has supply that comes on market every year. But we have shielded transactions, right? So we keep in the privacy factor of the proof of work model without really necessarily taking away from the value that you'd have in the Bitcoin model. So a lot of people really were very bearish on Zcash as a technology as a whole, especially when prices started to get really, really depressed. So if you guys look back over here in like February, March of 2024, right, we saw all this nasty price action in here. And even my team, right, who really understood the investment opportunity and, they were pretty heavily invested. Seeing this type of price action here while the rest of the market's doing decently well, or not necessarily getting beat up as hard as we saw Zcash getting beat up here, is a very tough thing to swallow. And then you also saw this article circulating of, the EU looking to ban privacy coins. And I think that maybe I'm just a little bit numb to that narrative at this point because I've been an XRP holder for so long. I held through the entire lawsuit of SEC v Ripple Labs. And I saw the other side of that, right? And at the time too, there was still the pending litigation. You had, the SEC claiming that all these coins were securities. You had, all this lack of clarity regarding brokers and exchanges and who's allowed to hold coins, right? And everyone was just so concerned that, Zcash is going to zero and they're going to ban it. And I had to create this huge write-up for the team. And I was like, hey guys, first of all, here's what Zcash is. Here's the regulatory front that we're facing as a whole in the crypto DLT space. And at the end of the day, right, if you ban privacy coins, they're still cold wallets, they're still DeFi exchanges. And in fact, to some people, it probably becomes more valuable because the government wants to want to ban something that is so dangerous like privacy, right? There's probably a lot of people that will value it very greatly. So, we really, really bought a lot down here. I told my team, I was like, hey guys, I have a whole bunch of, stable coins I've been kind of putting on the side here. Part of the consistent investor strategy is I, tuck away a portion of my monthly budget as stable coins, even when I, see good buying opportunities to capitalize on really, really good buying opportunities. So when we saw this really big, correction down here, $16, $18, $20, I was like, guys, I'm throwing the kitchen sink at it, right? And I know this risk appetite's not for everyone, but this is what I'm doing. And a lot of my team followed suit, right? And they lowered their averages. A lot of my team has somewhere between like a $20 and $24 average on Zcash. Fast forward to today, we're at a $94 Zcash. So from the post I made back here in February, right, we were sitting right around $19. We are up roughly 380% from that I'm throwing the kitchen sink at it call in our Discord. And I actually forwarded that in the Discord today just to remind our team of what that sentiment looked like. So one of the things that we're looking at here on Zcash is, first of all, make sure you guys are looking at the aggregated crypto chart, not the Coinbase chart, because what you'll notice is when you come out to the weekly chart here, Zcash has actually a lot more price action. We go way, way, way back here on Zcash. So the actual initial launch price for Zcash, the liquid price that I do not count, right? I'm not even using this, is almost $30,000, right? Nobody was buying it at $30,000. You guys can see on the weekly chart here, it was just straight capitulation. You finally started to see some actual reversal back here towards the $30 mark, right? And we established a liquid high right around the $900 mark. So that's the actual high I'm registering here. I'm saying $900 is the registered high for Zcash. That makes a lot of sense to me. You guys can see over back here in 2021, we came in for a retrace right around $350. So let's go ahead and remove all this here. Let's go ahead and grab the swing high and grab the swing low in here. So you guys can see that what ended up happening is we actually just ended up coming in for a retrace, right? We came in for like a 236 retrace. If you actually bring this down to the wick that was established here, it shows a little bit of a different retrace, and you bring the wick over here, slightly different retrace, but it shows the 236 was kind of like this topping area for us, almost got up to that 50% up here. You guys can see that when we came in for the retrace, it was a lot like what happened with XRP. When you had the 2013 pop, you pulled back, back, you retraced, you flat bottomed in here, right? That's basically what ended up happening. You flat bottomed in here, and then you finally saw some sort of breakout and reversal. When we look at the actual trend line that's in here for Zcash, you guys can see that we're right on the verge of actually breaking through and busting through this multi-year trend line. So since 2018, this trend line's been intact here. One of the things I've also been pointing to with the team here is that I've been noticing on the weekly charts that this is like world's biggest cup and handle here. And the cup would probably finish right around the $250, $350 mark, right? Meaning that there's probably some sort of corrective handle that happens in here, and then you get the actual explosive move here for Zcash. So I want you guys to remember that when you have prices that are down here like this, and you see even one or two negative articles, the sentiment is always going to be dog shit, right? You're never going to see people holding hands singing kumbaya, let's buy the freaking bottom together. It never, ever happens, okay? So when we see these structures and you see that we're tapping on these multi-year lows and you understand that there is a fundamental value to the opportunity, it's something you want to jump on, right? We have a TP plan that we adjusted when we do say hit those new lows, making our TP1 $350, but we do have targets that are much higher and beyond that, right? I'm looking at some of these extensions in here. These are still very viable targets. We've also taken market capitalization into effect here and talked about those areas of interest, being very viable areas based on that market capitalization. Now, obviously, when you guys look at the current daily gain, it's 28% of the day, even in just this last week, right? From the weekly open here to now, it's up about 60%. Obviously, I'm not encouraging you guys to buy Zcash at almost $100 here when we've increased so greatly here, even since, let's call it August, we're up about 167%. It's really, really extended right now. Now, one of the things I'm watching for here on Zcash is a very minimum of roughly a $75 back test here on Zcash, right? We broke over the high here from December of 2024. That was a huge area of interest to break over. We are starting to come up into some potential overhead resistance here. You guys can see back here in June, this was also a top here right around 115. So maybe there's a little bit more room overhead to run, but this is an area of interest that got broken out of and should be back tested. On the deeper side of things, we could see maybe 55 or 60, but if we tested at least 75, that would be acceptable. I want you guys to look at this chart and picture this, even further from today, and you start to see further breakouts, right? You see maybe the back test in here, and then we start to see 220, and we start to see 350 and 450, right? And then we start to say, oh, well, it's still a good deal at 220. It's still a good deal at 450. Remember that in the bear market, those are where the deals are found, okay? I know this was a little bit of a longer segment here on Zcash, but this is such a huge opportunity that we harped on that really got very low viewership for an extremely long time because Zcash was not this big, sexy, brand new AI coin. It was an old boy privacy coin that really wasn't getting a lot of coverage. But I saw the opportunity, my team saw the opportunity, and we jumped on it, and we continue to jump on it. After we broke it over our ceiling of $50, we told everyone DCA is off, right? This is no longer in the macro DCA zone. This is now going to be a limit-based order opportunity in order to join the position or to add to the opportunity. So very, very grateful for Zcash's performance. I think we've got a lot of road ahead of us. And just remember, guys, that these back-to-back days just takes 2 or 3 back-to-back days to change everyone's mind about sentiment and quality of technology. Next question is from Russell Randolph 3705. A lot of traditional analysis is about to go out the window soon. We are entering uncharted territory with changes to the monetary system and policy. Utility tokens are a different animal. Okay, so, I think that a lot of people start to get, all bullish and excited because they're in an asset class that they really, really believe in. They're very excited about. Totally agree that the monetary system is changing. Agree that we're seeing new railways being laid for our existing TradFi system to move over. We're seeing that happen right now today. Tokenization of real estate, tokenization of bonds, money market accounts, right? Tokenization of stocks, trading 24/7. It's happening right now before our very eyes. We are changing the way that we are trading, changing the way that we're doing commerce, changing the way that remittance markets move around the world. 100%, right? And I've been studying this stuff a long time. I've been doing this professionally full-time for 4 years, and I've been studying this industry for over 7 years. So fully aware of the fundamental change that has been happening. I've seen it happen slow, I've seen it happen fast, and now I've seen it happen extremely fast. When we look at the technical opportunities, right, you will still see technical analysis play a hand in this, right? There's a reason why you look at Bitcoin in the last cycle reaching out to Fibonacci extensions when the same narrative that you're talking about now was the same narrative last cycle, right? You're going to still see support and resistance levels matter. You're still going to see breakout backtest behavior. The reason that this still occurs is because market makers play a key role in the way that the markets move. Without market makers, we have illiquid markets, right? We'd essentially depend on you and me, offering the exact right size on both sides of the trade in order to create that liquid marketplace. But that's not a reality, right? We need to have market makers offer liquidity to the market so that we can have liquid trading 24/7. With those market makers, though, they create order blocks, right? And those are the ranges. Those are the support and resistance ranges or support and resistance bands that we identify. And when they leave those order blocks, they go back to manipulate those boxes again, right? So that behavior is always going to be a thing. When you look at the Dow Jones, you look at the S&P 500, you look at the NASDAQ, those are very mature markets with decades of price action. And what still happens, even though those are very mature markets and all these companies do fantastic things and they're on the verge of this and the brink of this in this industry, what still happens when you have bearish corrections? They come back and backtest those breakout zones. Breakout backtest, resatiating the support and resistance zones will always be a factor that we look at. You also look at the Fibonacci's, right? The Fibonacci extensions. Those are still factors that in the traditional markets, no matter how mature they get, still play a meaningful factor. Can we sometimes see our expectations exceeded? Of course, right? Can we see them fall short? Definitely. But I would never, ever deviate from something I've been studying for 9 years now, at least from the chart perspective, and say, you know what, because this technology is so valuable, everything we know about technical analysis goes out the window, right? And then we start going down the rabbit hole. We start watching all these influencers that promise us a $10,000 XRP and, this, that, and the other, because if the whole global GDP runs over this one network, then the price should be this, right? But that's not the reality, right? It's just never going to be the reality. So you don't have to follow traditional technical analysis. You don't have to follow these fundamental things. But if you study it deeply enough and you actually go back and back test it on multiple markets, it's a continuous theme. And it's all because this is how market makers algorithmically move the markets around. Let's move on to another question here. The next one is going to be VELO chart update, please. You got it, babe. Let's go ahead and take a look here. We're going to take a look here at the VELO chart. So again, guys, VELO is a very small capitalization coin. I'm a fan of small cap coins because they are the more volatile assets out there. Volatility comes on both sides though, right? So when we have very bullish periods, seeing double-digit days for a small capitalization coin, meaning $200-300 million or even less, those are very realistic days, right? You can see those continue for many days in a row, if not many weeks in a row. On the flip side of that, when you have a very bad day, seeing minus 15, sometimes minus 20% on some of these small caps is also not unrealistic. So you have to make this agreement with yourself that you're going to accept the volatility on both sides of the small capitalization opportunity. Now with VELO though, right, again, one of the things about small caps is that it takes much less money to get those multiple X's out of the asset because less money is required, right? If you have $100 million in a small capitalization coin, what's required for a 10X? About $1 billion, right? And again, in crypto, it's a very small amount of money. You have an asset that's worth $100 billion, right? Now you need $1 trillion in order to get that 10X out of it, right? So that's one of the things that I want you guys to think about when you think about what's possible, how far can it go, how much money is actually required to make that happen. So one of the things that we're looking at here with VELO is we've had just this beautiful climb in here on VELO. You guys can see there's been a beautiful ascending trend line here since 2022. So really great climb in here. That's all you really want to see out of an uptrend is higher highs and higher lows. We can see that there's been a bit of like kind of a outer wedge here as well, showing that we've been, keeping these highs in check here, creating this like ascending channel pattern to some extent. We also have some key levels up here when VELO launched. So back here in 2020, right, you guys can see that there are several areas of interest here that we can identify where we had some support bounces and we broke down. You guys can see those areas here. I'm going to mark up one more. So those are some of the big areas we're watching at here. We've really reclaimed and shown a lot of support down in these areas. We've showed that there was a huge strong floor here right around 0.008, huge floor of support in there. You guys can see that there's been a little bit of an area of resistance here right around the 2-cent mark. We've been kind of just waddling around in here since then. We're short-term slightly below the short-term MAs, being the 50-day, 100-day, and 50-week. You got the 200-week right around here around 1.8. If we get a break over that 2-cent mark, which is major resistance, that'll clear all the MAs and put momentum back in our favor. The areas of interest that we're watching for here on VELO is going to be this next major resistance for a very short-term trade right around the 4-cent mark would be a good area if you guys wanted to take a little trim there for about a 200% gain. Next big area is going to be this gap up here. It's about 850% gain towards the 13-cent mark. You guys can see there were some support bounces and a breakdown with no back test. It's an imbalance. And then the last huge big pocket up here, this is going to be the big mamma jamma. That's about a 20X towards that 28-cent mark and maybe even towards 48-cent mark for a 33X. So again, you start to do the math on it. You look at market capitalization. Not a ton of money is required to get 13, 28, and 47 cents up in here. Pair that with really consistent growth since 2022. You look at the overall shape that's been occurring in here, which I think this is a cup and handle. So there's a cup in here. And I think this has just been a really big extended handle. Very, very likely we'll see a measured move from there. So the cup roughly 1,200% move. If we were to see something similar, that would put us right around the 34-cent mark, which is right in the middle of that pocket there. So again, do I ever look at a single pattern like a cup and handle and say, well, the cup says this measure move? No, of course not. But when I pair that with imbalances, I look at other previous support and resistance zones, I look at the general momentum, it definitely shows a lot of growth potential here for VELO. So definitely one of my recommendations for stuff that hasn't completely popped off yet, right? VELO is one of those on our swing trading list that I think has a lot of value and something to consider there. All right, MG2312R says, I wouldn't be surprised if it goes bankrupt next year, considering negative reputation is built over the past few years. This is in reference to Casper. Anyone unfamiliar with the network who decides to research Casper will likely abandon it immediately. In my opinion, the blockchain is doomed. Why take the risk of choosing Casper when there are better alternatives available now? I think you are losing your time with that. Okay, again, guys, I want us to remember the overall goal here of investing in this space. When you guys invest, a lot of you guys are an all or nothing zero-sum game investor, and that is really, really going to be the downfall of everything for you guys. It's going to be the reason why you fail as an investor, because you guys decide to either be hyper diversified, meaning you guys have 50, 60, 70 assets and you have such little money in each one that it's not a meaningful amount of money to make an impact, or you guys are oversimplified. You're like, give me the one thing, right? I've got X amount of dollars. I want to put it all into one thing because it's going to do 50X, 100X, 200X, whatever it is, right? When that doesn't come to fruition right away, man, this project sucks, right? This person's making it, they're dumping on this. This is happening, that is happening, right? Everyone immediately starts to point fingers, right? And then when everything's bullish, right? Everyone, everything's great now, right? It's same thing we saw with XRP, same thing we're seeing with Zcash. It will be the same thing with Casper. It's more about patience than anything, guys. When you look at the fundamentals of Casper, it's a young chain, right? It's a young chain. It's still a newer chain. And people get very, very discouraged when they don't immediately turn a profit. So do some research for yourself. Upgradable smart contracts are a very, very valuable feature. And I don't know if a lot of you guys have done almost zero research on upgradable smart contracts. When you have the ability to modify contracts after they've already been deployed, that is a very valuable component, especially when you look at industries that require modifications or upgrades to those contracts as time goes by. There's a lot of value in that, right? When you think about smart contracts, remember that NFTs can also be a part of smart contracts. NFTs can represent anything, tangible and intangible items. When you can have intangible and tangible items inside of a smart contract that can be upgraded or modified, that is a lot of functionality, right? And if you guys wait until all of that utility is here, price will already be well ahead of that. A lot of people also are looking at Casper Labs, and they got very confused with the difference between Casper Association and Casper Labs. Casper Labs was a for-profit company that was intending to build on Casper Labs and then jump ship at the last minute, rebranded to Prove AI, and then built on Hedera. By the way, guys, Hedera has literally not done anything price-wise on that news announcement, right? It's obviously done well since then, but it did absolutely nothing on the announcement of Prove AI moving over there. People, of course, because they were confused and didn't know any better, started dumping and selling all of their Casper. All of that selling was done in about a week and a half's time. And we're well above those levels, right? We're over 60% above those levels where everybody dumped based on that news. So don't know what you're talking about with, the bankruptcy here. Casper Association is healthy. We've seen a lot of development on the network, seen a lot of development from Michael Stoyer, CTO of Casper Association, making meaningful progress with both partnerships as well as the regulatory front, meeting with the SEC, talking at Sol Conference, meeting with Cynthia Loomis. So again, guys, I don't expect you guys to follow everything, footprint for footprint here. But it's up to you guys to really decide which opportunities you're willing to be patient with, because most of you guys don't have patience, and that's why you guys jump around so much and you get very frustrated in this space. If you guys had jumped out of XRP, you guys would have missed huge gains there. You jumped out of Zcash, would have missed huge gains there, and a lot of people did. So remember, nobody sings Kumbaya and holds hands and buys bottom together. Usually it's only after the fact that we see some big pops in the market that everyone gets very interested in. Sentiment is extremely high. Let's go ahead and move on to the last question here. Aflac 1976 says, do you guys offer a buy and sell indicator that could work inside of TradingView? No, we do not. Because, let's back up here. I've been studying, like I said, charting for a very long time here. I started in the foreign exchange markets, obviously started, adding the stock market, metals, other things into my analysis just to kind of get a better bird's eye view on the market, start to study other markets as well and see what works there. And I've tried a lot of indicators, right? I've tried a lot of Pine scripts. I've tried a lot of different indicators. There can be ones that can be helpful for additional confluence. What I have learned through almost a decade of studying charting is that really the basics are going to be the things that guide you in the long-term cycle trading. That's going to be support and resistance levels on weekly and daily levels. That's going to be your Fibonacci retracement tool set up properly, like I have it set up here. That's going to be maybe 3 to 5 moving averages, maybe a couple short-term, one maybe midterm, one long-term, and then maybe looking at some continuation reversal patterns. Those are the things that I have noticed have worked consistently in every market, no matter what I've been studying. So a lot of people look for that indicator because they want that easy button. They want to say, okay, I don't want to have to learn this myself. I don't want to have to manually do this myself. I just want the indicator to pop on, tell me when to buy and sell, and I want price to reverse immediately from that buy or sell section. A lot of times what the indicators are doing is they're just collecting a whole bunch of data like RSI, MACD, moving averages, maybe some areas of interest like support and resistance, and they try to give you a comprehensive answer. But they can't look at everything, right? They're not looking at, those buy and sell indicators are also not looking at the news. They might give you a buy or sell signal right ahead of FOMC, right? And that's not going to help you with anything because FOMC is a very volatile day, or the NFP report or jobs report, right? There's a lot of things that can affect the markets and affect what you see on the charts that indicators and robots can't factor in, right? They're not going to factor in what they think that Jerome's going to say. They're not going to look at what happened in the previous revisions. They're not going to look at all this macro data and be able to look at the charts and plug that in and make that part of their analysis. So we teach you guys the basics at cryptocharge.com. We have a 4-part series on technical analysis. First, we show you how to use TradingView, set it up to look like mine, show you guys the support and resistance, the Fibonacci's, the moving averages, and then continuation reversal structures. I promise you guys, if you spend even just a few hours practicing these things and then just spend maybe 15 minutes a day practicing these things, looking at your watch list, you won't care about indicators, right? Because most of these things are additional areas of confluence. You guys will see me on the show sometimes pull up RSI as an additional area of confluence. If I'm like, okay, cool, we've done our analysis here. What does the RSI say in conjunction with this, right? Or I might look to say, hey, this might look like an ABC correction. But for the most part, those are just additional cherries on top. I highly, highly recommend that you guys get dialed into those fundamentals. That's all we have for today's show. We'll be back again on Monday with our after hours show. I hope you guys check that out. It's also a great show that we do here on YouTube for you guys. And again, guys, cryptocharge.com with code YouTube, you guys get 30 days free plus 50% off any membership. It comes out to $49 a month or $49.99 for the year. That includes everything on the website as well as our Discord community. So hope to see you guys in there soon. Talk later.